Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 10th of October, a month, 10th of October 2023. Before we get to the Frontline, let's just point you towards my channel page, ATP Geopolitics. Go to the live tab. Or you can see it on the home tab as well by going down to past live streams, or you go to the live stream. And I did a video last night with Anton and Pierre from Base UA, a fantastic Ukrainian-based charity that is doing really fabulous work, particularly in the east, but also with helping children in the mountains to the west as well, actually. So that was I thought a really engaging, fantastic experience interviewing these guys. They're doing such fabulous work. Please go and check how you can support them. Check out the video first, see if you think they're worthy. I think they are, definitely 100%. There are ways that you can support them that are listed there. PayPal definitely works. Yeah, it'd be great if you can check that video out and see what they're about. Right, well, in the meantime, pause the video if you've never seen my mapping before, so you can understand what the lines mean. We're going to go to the northeast axis from Kupiansk to Svatovo to Crimea. The ISW says of this area that Yevlash, a spokesperson for the Ukrainians, reported that Russian operations near Sinkivka and Avdiivka have escalated despite a decrease in aviation and drone activity in the Kupiansk-Liman direction due to heavy rainfall. Right, a few things to mention here. So yeah, there's activity as according to the ISW. Yevlash is saying it's heating up a little bit, but that is the case even though that you can't get the drones out, the aviation can't get up as well. There's a lot of rain, and I really forgot to realize that this would have had an effect on the loss statistics. So yesterday I said there was a lack of loss stats, or just lower numbers across the categories due to the fact it had been Monday, and that's a result of they're referring to Sunday stats, which can happen. But today's stats were really low, or fairly low as well. And I think rainfall is going to have more to do with that. With the heavy muds, you can't move your troops around, you can't move mechanized equipment around very easily, and you can't get up aviation and drones. So it becomes difficult, and therefore there's less activity on the front line in certain areas. Right. The ISW says, yeah, other than that, lots of activity here and there. We do have Makivka, this area between Svatova and Crimea here, where this is the difference between the mappers. So Syriac maps, who quite often does things in line with what Russian sources are saying, and that's obviously often or sometimes correct. And he puts out a mapping change because the Russians claim, yeah, we've moved forward in this area. And I said this the other day, you will see Andrew Perpetua catch up with this, because he generally looks at satellite imagery as the main part of his mapping changes. Not just that, my goodness, he looks at tons and tons of video feeds as well. But if there is bad weather, as in there's clouds in the sky, then the satellites that pass over that aren't passing over every single day, so it might be a couple of days between passes, and then there might be cloud cover, which there is more of at the moment, then he's going to find it very difficult to update his maps accurately and in a timely manner. And so here we have an example where, yeah, the Russians did make an attack towards Makivka. Everyone was fairly sure of that, but he didn't change his map because he hadn't seen the requisite evidence. That has now happened. That's not to say that they made that change. They made that gain yesterday, though. But anyway, the Russians have had success in Makivka area. Then we're sort of coming on down past the Seversk front line to Bakhmut. Quite a bit to say about Bakhmut in the ISW. Ukrainian forces continued offensive operations in the Bakhmut direction yesterday and reportedly advanced. Ukrainian General Staff reported that the Ukrainians had achieved partial success southwest of Bakhmut near Klishchivka and Avdiivka. So they've announced that in a number of different places. Russian mill bloggers claim that heavy fighting is ongoing for tactical heights near the railway line between Klishchivka and Avdiivka, which is what we'd expect. There is continued momentum for the Ukrainians, not reflected on the mapping today, but they appear to be having some success there. The ISW, American military think tank, continues. Ukrainian Rubizh Rapid Response Brigade spokesperson noted that Russian forces have changed their tactics in the Bakhmut direction and are increasingly using small groups of 4 to 8 people to bypass Ukrainian forces by maneuvering competently instead of throwing large waves of infantry at Ukrainian positions. So this is the idea that at the height of the battle for Bakhmut, the Russians were using Storm Z penal companies, these units of basically human waves, throwing in troops to try and take these areas, not exclusively, but that was one of their options that they were utilizing. Now they've gone back with the conventional Russian forces around here, probably not wanting to lose that many of their troops. They are using much smaller units and maneuvering competently, as according to the ISW. Okay, so now we're going to, if I get on the right page here, we're going to move south from Bakhmut. I don't really have any sources concerning Bakhmut. Now you see a lot of pins here that JR has put in. He was talking about how, it may look like Russia have made these great advances around this area, but there's actually not really been any activity west of Avdiivka for an awful long time. In fact, arguably it's fairly similar to what the annexation lines are, so no real activity since the beginning of the war. What's happened is Andrew Perpetua has, with a fine-tooth comb, looked at satellite imagery around here and has changed his mapping accordingly, and was made aware of more trench lines that I don't know if I'm going to be able to see with these. It depends on the age of the imagery around here, because Google have been updating their free browser-based version, which I use, that was 2018 imagery. Some of it is updating variously to new imagery, and I wonder if that's what's happened here. So as you can see with Suriyat maps, they have the imagery, they have the Russian defensive lines, including this extensive trench network and set of buildings there, and I believe that Andrew Perpetua has got imagery to suggest that actually, as you can see, the trenches there as well, has imagery to suggest that that's where the Russians have been basically since the beginning. So it's not like they've made any gains there, but his lines were previously behind those positions, where you can see, well, you can't really see it there, but up above here you can see the trench lines as according to Suriyat maps there. So anyway, he's going along with that and has changed his mapping. So that's a rejig rather than a gain. So then when we come to Avdiivka, there is some gains for the Ukrainians, but it's more like a rejig, as you can see, just including the water bodies. That's for Andrew Perpetua again, but a bit of a gain here to the south of Avdiivka, around Vodjanye, and again this is fairly significant though. It does include the water body there, but all of this area here, there's a significant difference, so what I was trying to say, between Andrew Perpetua and Suriyat maps. So that it will be interesting to see whether Suriyat maps eventually catches up with that, or what underwrites that big difference there. And again, some rejigging around this area to include water bodies. Just I'm reflecting, or JR is reflecting, what his changes are in his mapping with our mapping, because we use that data. But as far as Avdiivka is concerned, there is quite a bit to say here. It is pretty active. They are, well, let's go to, first of all, what Suriyat map says. So Suriyat map says a Russian army, and we've heard this from a couple of sources, has started a huge attack in the front of Avdiivka, and the Avdiivka front this morning, preceded by intensive bombardment during the last few days. Let us remember, and they have, remember, it started kind of some days ago with the coke factory being taken out there and lots of aviation hits in Avdiivka. Well, let's remember that the city, he says, is a very important bastion for the Ukrainian army, as it allows it to maintain a continuous bombardment of the city of Donetsk. which has been a headache for the Donetsk People's Republic during these almost 10 years of conflict. The capture of Avdiivka would mean an end to the almost daily shelling. However, the battle will not be easy for the Russian army, as it requires a considerable number of troops to carry out the enveloping movement that forces the Ukrainian withdrawal from this place. Direct assaults are useless in the face of an enormous amount of fortifications present within the locality, so we will witness fighting on the outskirts from the north and the south and the east after the arrival of numerous reinforcements to the region in recent weeks. Reinforcements that had hardly taken place previously in an axis where the Russian forces, and more specifically the Republican militias, have been in a minority with respect to the Ukrainian side. To see Wagner's troops in this front will allow us to know if it is the second Bakhmut that was so much predicted. So whether you'd see some of the Wagner troops coming back to fight in the Avdiivka area, that is interesting. I mean, there are claims that they're attacking from the north up in the Krasnohorivka area. We have seen them make some gains there. If you're going to take Avdiivka, it is doing what they've been trying to do, but do it better, which is get towards Stepova here, across the railway line, start closing it in north of the industrial area here, and then getting to Severny here and up to Tonyenka, or even further, wider sort of encirclement from Pervomaisky and up here. But it's so difficult. This is so well defended in terms of tree lines and trenches and dugouts, fortifications that have been well established, even down here at Novelska, where the Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back and they are kind of pressuring towards Pisky, which would make what the Russians might be intending even more difficult. You know, they need to sort this problem out, the Russians. So yeah, we've seen the Russians push here recently and gain some territory along that tree line towards the main road there. Well, actually, that's a railway. Is that a railway line going up there? So, yeah. So it'll be interesting if the Russians are trying this again. It's the kind of question of, but this would be very useful for the Russians. They would like this would have been, in my opinion, a far more sensible place for them to attack and take than Bakhmut. Right, Bakhmut doesn't particularly have much intrinsic value. The value for Avdiivka is extrinsic value. It protects Donetsk, and Syriac Maps is right. This being under Ukrainian control does allow them to hammer Donetsk, and the city of Donetsk does get hammered routinely. I mean, you can put that's 20 kilometers, so you can have some artillery there. This is pretty average artillery, and you can hammer this area. Now, if the front line was all the way up here, then that artillery would have to be much further back over here, and then it becomes, it's still doable, but it becomes, more challenging, more difficult. So this is a thorn in the side of the DPR and the Russian forces in the Donetsk area, and it long has been. So yeah, as I say, it would have been more sensible than Bakhmut, in my opinion. Right. Renewal report says heavy fighting is occurring in the direction of Krasnohorivka, exactly what it's telling you, up to the north there, and Berdichi. Russians want to isolate Avdiivka from the north, supported by multiple launch rocket systems, artillery, and airstrikes. So they are pushing along to the north, while the Ukrainians appear to be pushing and having some success down in the Opitny area, although the Russians further to the east there, north of Spartak, have had their own success over the last few days. So there is lots of activity. Here is, and this is, as far as I can work out, this has been geolocated to, I'll just let you know where this is first of all. So that is, we're going to Vodyanye, which is around here, and across the, I don't know if that is here, around there, that we are seeing this big column of Russian equipment. Nonetheless, let's go and check it out. This might be from the other direction, so that is going south that way, and north is actually the direction in which these vehicles are moving. So in Avdiivka, where Russians attempted an assault today, so this is an assault, so you just imagine they are going north. Butasov says a Russian column of 9 vehicles left Donetsk in an attempt to cut off Avdiivka. However, something happened to the first vehicle in the column. I don't know what happened to this, this column as a whole. We have seen some columns get taken out. We're going to come on to that in a second, much further, or a bit further to the south at Novomykhailivka. But here we have a a rather unfortunate vehicle at the front come off the pontoon bridge and then collapse and get itself into a lot of trouble. Not a good look, really, that is it. Anyway, so that footage has come out. And that kind of indicates that there is attacking around here, and they are on the move. That they are concentrating in this area. According to the source, 9 units of armor were moving Donetsk through Pisky to Vodyane, but they didn't make it. In short, their task was to cut off Avdiivka from Vodyane and Opitne. That is what the Russians have been doing there. Then there's this other footage that is doing the rounds of, and reporting from Ukraine did a whole video on this last night, of an airborne assault brigade attacking in a column of equipment around the Novomykhailivka area. So we're going to come out of there just to let you know that there could well be, the Russians could well be shaping up to do a larger assault and to try and take Avdiivka. I can't see that they have the capability to do that. Otherwise, they would have done it already. Do you know what I mean? Like a year and a half later, with the degradation of their forces that we've seen, why would they try and do something like that now when they have been really trying to do that for a year and a half? So there's been horrifically tough fighting around Avdiivka. It has been Bakhmut 2.0, and at times they were taking more casualties around Avdiivka than Bakhmut. There's been really tough for both sides, by the way. Both sides have really felt Avdiivka, and they've got nowhere. So what's the difference now? What can Russia do now that they couldn't do a year ago? And the answer is, well, actually, I'm pretty sure that the difference is what they can do now would be worse. Like, they're in a worse position to do that now. Just, wholly bizarre. But Novomykhailivka down here, there was an attack up towards Novomykhailivka from this kind of area here. And as I talked to you this morning in my losses piece, there was some heavy losses for the Russians there. As P-Star 11 says, epic footage. 79th Airborne Assault Brigade destroyed a whole column of Russians who tried to storm Ukrainian positions in the Marinka area. So that's Novomykhailivka. You can go and check the footage out. There's lots of exploding vehicles and whatnot. So that's there. And that has been geolocated. In fact, the ISW, so that's that footage there. I'll pause it because otherwise I'll get hammered. ISW talks of this, suggesting that it shows Russian forces have advanced southeast of Novomykhailivka. So let's get the geolocation on those destroyed bits of equipment. This is this is around this position. Oops. And we'll I don't seem to be able to do very well with my. This is the problem when you can't feel your fingers. Everything is so difficult. Right. Oh, poor. Woe is me. Whatever. Right. Okay. So this is significant because that's around that area. So you can see it is an attack, and this will be into the grey zone towards the Ukrainian controlled area. So that is challenging. But if it has been rebutted, then perhaps that is just still grey zone. If they have lost a lot of equipment, then that suggests that they don't control that area particularly robustly. And then down here as well. And finally, let's just get one more. Just to get an idea of the sort of places that this equipment's being lost. And nearby there. So along this tree line, they got sort of hammered, and I presume sort of that was the end of that. We saw that the Ukrainians not only took out the vehicles with precision guided munitions, but then once the vehicles were disabled and the troops started running away, they hit them with cluster munitions. So they knew what they're doing. They had eyes in the sky, and it was a pretty successfully repelled attack there by the Ukrainians. Okay, just to let you know, Avdiivka destroyed and mostly left by residents since early this morning. Russia has increased the shelling and bombing on the city and its surroundings. It's expected that Russia will increase its offensive operations in the area. So again, no reports sort of making claims that Avdiivka is going to be something of a target for the Russians. And here we have an idea of what Avdiivka looks like. And these are the sorts of places that Anton was talking about, with regard to evacuations. We're going into these places, convincing people to leave. They don't want to leave, even though it's a pretty horrific war zone. People are still living there. What Anton would be doing is spending weeks going in and speaking to them, coming out, going back in, and then eventually saying, right, now's the time for you guys really to leave here. And they may or may not do that. It's a game of hearts and minds. But so Avdiivka is a tough place to be. But that also, includes all these other places around here, down to Marinka. You've got Novomykhailivka. There's been activity around Mikhailska. Just here, both the Russians and Ukrainians claim to be attacking in this area. ISW talks about that generally. Oh no, it's up in that paragraph, I think. But also, here we are, Mikhailska, Novodonetska, so on and so forth. And then a Russian mail blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces continue attempts to seize the tactical battlefield initiative near Pryutne. So as we come to the west here, towards the Velika Novosilka salient, there's still activity taking place north of Pryutne, where the Ukrainians are attempting to wrest back that initiative. The Russians have had more success north of there over the last week than the Ukrainians, but I just get the sense that this whole sector is a lot quieter than it was at the height of the counteroffensive, and most attention is being poured into this sector, so the Robotyne area. I meant to ask Anton last night how to pronounce Robotyne. I'll just continue pronouncing about 7 different ways each episode. Right, so we have some gains for the Ukrainians, as you can see, according to a few of the mappers. Let's go through some of the sources. We've only got a few. War Gonzo, in this morning update, so this is a pro-Russian, very pro-Russian source, stated that the Ukrainians managed to advance west of Novofedorivka, and assaults on Novoprokopivka are still ongoing. So west of Novofedorivka, that's Novofedorivka. West of there is this area where indeed Suryat Maps has some improvement for the Ukrainians there. They pushed the Russians back in that general area. We don't have that, Avdiivka having that done yet, but then he might be waiting for clear satellite imagery to suggest that, although he has got some information down here. It may be from different sources or whatnot, but the Russians are pushed back here right to the edge of Novoprokopivka. Here we have that area just north of Vobove I was talking about there, of the Suryat Maps having claiming that the Ukrainians have pushed the Russians back, managing to recapture some positions west of Novofedorivka. On the other hand, an attack towards Vobove was repelled by the Russian army. If we go to the ISW, it says around here that, so quite a lot to say. And there's talk about activity of Ukrainians in Novoprokopivka, although it might not be sustained. So anyway, ISW says some Russian and Ukrainian sources indicated that Russian forces conducted localized offensive operations south of Halaipole and made tactical territorial gains yesterday. Just to let you know, it's not quite this area, but I mentioned yesterday towards Chivone, the Ukrainians had been pushed back. That's according to both mappers, as you can see there. Andrew Perpetua had these kind of areas there, and Suryat Maps has pushed further to the north. His Russian line, defensive line. A Russian mail blogger claimed that Russian and Ukrainian forces are fighting meeting engagements near Marfapil, and the mail blogger claimed that Russian forces have gained a tactical initiative in that area. Ukrainian military observer reported that elements of the Russian 64th Motorized Rifle Brigade advanced several hundred meters and contested a grey zone in the Marfapil Chivone area. The observer stated that these attacks are only tactical, as Russian forces are attacking at a scale of a battalion or less. So it's still significant numbers there, but if they're attacking with a battalion, but yeah, there is some activity taking place there, some gains for the Russians. but I guess the implication is it's not going to be that sustained. Stupun, who's a spokesperson for the Ukrainians, says that the Ukrainian forces achieved partial success west of Avdiivka. Russian mill bloggers claim that Ukrainian forces marginally advanced towards Kopane, and between Robotna and Novodanilivka, a Russian mill blogger claimed that a small Ukrainian group entered the outskirts of Novoprokopivka, but that elements of the 42nd Motorized Rifle Brigade, so that's the Russians, ultimately repelled the group. Geolocated footage published on the 8th shows elements of the 42nd Motorized Rifle Brigade conducting clearing operations in the northern outskirts of Novoprokopivka, suggesting that Ukrainian forces may have temporarily advanced there. Okay, so putting that all together, there's some success west of Avdiivka, some success up here we can see, possible success towards Kopane, as we have heard over the last few days, seems to be one of the major areas of focus for the Ukrainians, and then some gains down towards Novoprokopivka, but not sustained gains, pushing the Russians back. But even though there might have been sort of elements of Ukrainian forces here, they were ultimately repelled. This is going to be a pretty difficult area. And what I want to do I have time to do this? I'm going to make time, so I will do it. Okay, it's about. I'm not going to do it in this video. It's about 10 minutes of discussion here on the Ukraine Latest podcast with Roland Oliphant, who's spoken to people on the ground and discusses why it's so difficult for the Ukrainians to make ground quickly in this particular area. Well, you can extrapolate this across the front line, but particularly down this southern area where you've got flat ground where it's in times past it was a dust bowl. It's now agricultural land with tree lines to stop soil erosion, and so you have these big fields with tree lines, flat land, and you can be seen from a long way away. So it means attacking is very difficult. Having to do things by night. Quite often, I saw some footage last night of a Ukrainian nocturnal attack that sort of caught some Russians off guard, and then the Russians obviously at night, you can see on thermal camera from above, the Russians end up shooting each other and throwing grenades at each other, and so it's really disorientating, but it's really difficult. He said Ronan Elephant was talking to a unit that had taken a trench line at some cost to themselves, but they'd done it on like the fourth attack, and their success was largely contingent upon luck in that attack. So the way he describes it, or the way these troops describe it, and what they were doing is just really difficult. Every meter is, we know this, but it was a fascinating 10 minutes. So I will do a separate video where I'll just pick that apart. But this is why you've got a stasis here and not much is happening, because as long as the Russians have enough troops to put, here's a gun, here's some hand grenades, here's a bit of ammunition, go and sit in that trench. That is really difficult for the Ukrainians to take, and as soon as they take a trench, the Russians will then counterattack it, as we know. And so you'll have, like we've seen here, Novoprokopivka, they took these trenches, then they counterattacked, then took them, and now they're trying to take the north of Novoprokopivka, where the Russians are just absolutely entrenched and fortified. At what cost? You're sending people in, you're losing people. Like, really, what you want to do is just flatten this whole place from the air. And then moving afterwards, but then you've got minefields to deal with, and they're talking about how they quite often get through a minefield and then have to work backwards to clear the minefield for larger equipment to come through. So the sappers are going with the frontline troops and then working backwards. And it's just really difficult. And this is where I was talking about earlier, where the Russians are going for mining vehicles over any other vehicle. So you have a D-miner and a Leopard 2. So you've got one shot on your ATGM. They'll take out the D-miner because it's more important, because the mines will take out the Leopard. So it is just so difficult. And this is why I've been saying that I don't think the Ukrainians are in a good enough position to be able to take territory easily. I think they just need to degrade the Russian capability so much. The problem is they can dig in. So it's quite difficult for artillery to take out Russian troops when they're in these trench lines. Cluster munitions aren't heavy enough to take out well dug in trench lines, although the odd one might fall in to the trenches, but they're much better for taking troops when they're out in the open. And really, even artillery ammunition isn't going to touch the side in some of these larger trenches. So you need your larger bombs released. Your JDAMs would be better, but you need a lot of them along all sorts of different tree lines and trench lines, and it's just so difficult. Anyway, we'll go through that later. Now we'll go on to I think have I finished here? Yes, so we'll now go on to Kherson. And in the Kherson area, well, before we get there, I'll just show a little bit of difference on the map. And this is Suryat map showing a gain for the Ukrainians in the Antonivsky Bridge area. So this is the Antonivsky Bridge, where you've got the Ukrainians trying to hide under the bridge and being hammered by FAB 500 aviation released bombs, guided bombs there. That's been happening for weeks. The Ukrainians appear to have this area under their control. Also, this area of the Conquer Bridge, Conquer River, sorry, the northern shore, as you look at it there. And they also have some purchase over around here, I believe. And they have made some, I'd say, fairly significant. I mean, in the whole grand scheme of things, I don't know, but we haven't seen a lot of movement around here for a long time, and suddenly Suryat Maps has this whole area here, the Russian lines pushed back. I don't know if that's just something that's gradually been happening over time and now it's just reflected in the mapping, or something bigger that happened yesterday. I don't know. The claims coming out from this area are what we have heard previously, but they continue. So this is Romanov again, one of the Russian ultra-nationalist mill bloggers, saying pro-Russian sources. Romanov says the lack of counter-battery fire in Novokakhovka in the occupied Kherson region is a concern. Quote, "We can't organize a counter-battery while the Ukrainians stupidly blast us with artillery all day long. We urgently need to do something about it. Please help." And actually, some of the details of this are quite interesting. Russians from the 810th Brigade and those near Novokakhovka left bank are writing to Romanov about the lack of artillery and counter-battery. Romanov indicates these messages are far from being isolated. Sometimes units can fire only 8 shells per day. I mean, that's really significant. And for this, we need normal electronic warfare, artillery fire support for the prompt destruction of enemy targets. There is none of this. The Ukrainians realized this a long time ago and are now launching FPV drones at us from position to position, mowing down our fighters with impunity. We are losing the best and for nothing. The commanders know everything, but the inaction of the jackals is simply killing. We are ready to defend our motherland, but help us in this. The fate of Russia is being decided here and now. So this is the Kherson region. The situation is dire. The Ukrainians are making art, hitting FPV with drones, and now they are pouring in 4 times stronger than before. We are holding out, but we need to think carefully and strengthen our defense near the bridge. And for this, we need normal, all that stuff that I've just said. So it's looking tough. We go for this other one. Good morning, if I may say so. Contractor with 28 SMEs. Call sign I'm writing to draw attention to what is happening in our area of Novaya Kakhovka. I used to be a volunteer in the Donbass and have seen a lot, but I just can't understand what in the second year of the Northern Military District we can't organize a counter battery while the Ukrainians stupidly blast us with artillery all day long. I think many will understand what it's like to be under fire where nothing depends on you and you don't even see the enemy, and then you provide first aid to a comrade after fragmentation. This puts a lot of pressure on the guides. We urgently need to do something about the counter battery. Please help. And as you know, PCL 11 here says 8 shells per day was one claim from one of them as well. That is dire for the Russians there, and we've heard that quite often in this particular area that they are really struggling for counter battery fire. But at the same time, the Ukrainians are struggling to make the advance, and I think predominantly because where they don't have counter battery fire, the Russians, they do have aviation, and they are using that effectively here to keep the Ukrainians at bay, whilst also occasionally striking, targets behind there as well. Back towards. Kryvyi Rih and so on and so forth. So the Ukrainians are supposedly gathering here. The ISW again mentions this, where they say that the Russians are observing that whereas Russian mill bloggers expressed continued concern that Ukrainian forces to the west of Kherson Oblast are preparing for an offensive operation across the Dnipro river. So, yeah, that's still on the cards as far as the Russians are concerned. Right. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate all your support. And I'm going to go and do a video about this Ukraine the latest segment because I think it's really useful. Take care. Speak soon.